I was aware that my thoughts create my reality. And if I want to live a different life, I need to think different thoughts. But how do I think different thoughts? I'm so used to thinking the same thoughts all the time. So that was where I was like, okay, I need help to change my thoughts, to think different thoughts.
%83 of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business. On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs podcast. Today, I have Marissa all the way from, tell us where you're from, Marissa.
I am from Brisbane, Australia.
Yes, love the accent. So we're going to have some awesome topics that we're going to share today on happiness and life and how we can make these major transformational shifts in people's lives or help them make them in a matter of days and sometimes hours. So Marissa, welcome. So happy and so glad to have you here. So I'm going to jump in with a big question right now. How is it that you can help people in a matter of days that have spent years and sometimes decades going to therapy?
That is such a great question. The amazing thing with RTT is that it really does dive straight into that root cause of the problem. Once your subconscious is able to identify the root cause of the problem, it's so much easier then to be able to go in and do that rewiring and recoding of that subconscious, because your subconscious is what is ruling the show every single day. So it's so powerful because you're going straight to that root cause. You're bypassing the conscious mind. So you're not having to sit there and listen to the conscious mind, having the chatter and the talk through. You're literally turning off the switch of the conscious mind and turning on the switch for the subconscious mind and going straight down to that root cause of the reason. So it's incredibly powerful technique, and using the combinations between NLP and cognitive behavior therapy and the psychotherapy elements as well. There's so many tools that really get in there and go through and do that releasing process as well. So it's such a phenomenal treatment. And I really do feel like it is one of those things that it's like, it almost sounds too good. And it is one of those things that you really need to try and experience for yourself to see the power and the benefits of how incredible this treatment is. Because when I first heard about it, I was like, really? How good can this really work? And then I had sessions myself and I was absolutely blown away. And then seeing results with my clients as well has just been phenomenal.
So I agree with you. It does sound too good to be true. And when I was asked to come out to do something similar for myself to get my son help for anxiety, it was a weekend, right? So I'm like, we're going to spend a whole weekend. So that makes sense, right? From sun up to sundown. But what really happened is there was a 3-hour session, Marissa, where this ex-Navy SEAL took me back to my childhood into the places where I didn't have control or I had stress or I had trauma. And in 3 hours, I came out of that room a completely different person. And here we are 2 years later. Some people are probably like, that shit's not going to last. He's going to go back to the smoking pot and the drinking and, carrying on and whatnot. And no, it's, it's gotten way more powerful over these 2 years. So you were right. You're right on some people are going to be like, it doesn't work, but RTT is served tens of thousands of people now to date. And don't most of the people that have gone to therapy and tried EMD? They've tried everything, right? And they're like, we've tried everything to work. And then they come and they try this and it's a different story.
100%. And, for me, I really feel like healing isn't a linear journey. And I feel like it's a combination of so many different things that people try throughout their life. And every therapy kind of peels back the layer of that onion a little bit more. And for myself, like I had done so many things for different reasons in my life. And it wasn't until I started having sessions myself and started peeling back the layers. And I was like, whoa, this is like, it gets deep really fast. And that's where the results come from, because it's literally peeling back multiple layers at the same time to get straight into that root cause.
So when people hear real deep, there's a lot of people who are scared, because I've talked to some of my closest friends that said, I think this would really make a difference in my life. And I go, why won't you do it? And they're like, we're afraid. So when you talk about going really deep, should people be really scared to bring up their past?
That is a really great question. And that is actually something that I get a lot with my clients as well. And I think because it has that element of hypnosis, there's that bit of a stigma where people are like, oh my God, are you going to make me get up on stage and cluck like a chicken? Like, what's going to happen? Or even myself, I was like, I don't want people in my head, like, get out of my head, so it's totally normal to have that fear factor. But the thing is that, like, even when you're in hypnosis, you're completely in control the entire time. So nobody else can enforce, their free will against your free will. So that person is in complete control the entire time. And yeah, going deep down to the root cause of the reason, it can be scary, especially if there's been quite a lot of things that have happened or traumatic events. But with this kind of therapy, when you go back to that, you're not actually reliving that scene. So you're not actually having to relive those same feelings and the thoughts and everything that was experienced at that time, because we don't need to go back to feel those feelings to be able to pull out the information that we need from that scene. So it is an incredibly safe experience as well. The client is in complete control the entire time. And the whole treatment is done in a way that is safe for the client, so that they're not reliving any past trauma and it's not reactivating or re-triggering anything either.
So one of my favorite quotes is, pain moves through families until someone's willing to feel it, right? And I tell this to people all the time. To get to freedom, you've got to move through the pain of the truth. We as human beings can only suffer when we're living in the untruth, right? So every client you've ever had, did you ever have one client that ever came to you that was living in the truth?
Gosh, I mean, I have had amazing results with like all of my clients in varying degrees. Like, everyone has had different things. And I think everyone, when they come to see me, they always end up walking away with things differently from what they thought they were originally going to experience. And that's the beautiful thing about this treatment, is your subconscious knows what it needs to work on. And you might come for one presenting problem, but then it starts working on so many other areas in your life that then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I can see these improvements in so many other areas. But I guess one of my standout ones that I had was a client who had a lot of generational trauma. And you're so right, like, that trauma does carry through families. So she was carrying a lot of generational trauma. So her family had been refugees. So then there was a lot of like things that had happened in her childhood because of the situations that had happened in the family's past. So she was consciously and unconsciously storing a lot of trauma in her body that was her family's trauma, not from experiences and events that she had necessarily experienced herself. But then the events that she was experiencing in her own life were compounding to build that trauma up to a point that it was like unmanageable in her day-to-day life and was affecting so many different things. So she originally came to see me to work on releasing the trauma. And same thing again, she had many different therapies and had tried so many different things for years. And she got to a point and she came to me and she was like, I'm so desperate, I need help. Like, it's incredibly crucial now. Like, I'm at a point where it's like, I have no other options. Like, I need help now.
So what was showing up in her life?
So she just had this innate sense of lack of safety and fear in everyday life. So she was constantly afraid for her family, to be out in the environment, anything that could potentially happen to her or her family. Even though she had created now a safe family for her immediate family, a safe environment for her immediate family, there was still that feeling that it could be taken away anytime, or something could come and potentially uproot them or cause conflict or trauma to her immediate family. And so she just wanted to be able to live not in that sense of fear every single day, and also to release the trauma from her body, because she'd had so much generational trauma that was being stored in her body. So she had an incredible trauma release during this session. And I honestly wish that I could have taken before and after photos, because her face when I started the session and then when we finished the session, it was like she looked like she was 10 years younger. Like, you could physically see the weight and the release that had been lifted off her from just the trauma that had been released in that session. And then the most amazing thing was, during that and releasing this trauma and then listening to the recording for the 21 days, when I did the final catch up with her, she also had I guess, like that sense of a victim where people just were, she was powerless. She didn't have a voice. So now she has this amazing level of like self-power and inner confidence that she's never had in her life. Like now she can use her voice. She's able to assert herself. So not only was she able to take control of her environment and her situations and release that trauma, but now she's actually able to have a voice and to actually step into her full power for like the first time in her life. It's such a beautiful transformation.
That's amazing. So I asked you earlier, did you ever have a client that wasn't living in the truth? And this is a perfect example. Every client I've ever had, like this lady, no fault of her own, the trauma creates the untruth. So she had the untruth that I'm not safe, that I'm not worthy, that I can't speak my voice. And what you did, how many hours did you work with her?
Just one session.
And is that 2 hours?
So all up, the session was just under 2 hours, and all up, I probably have spent maybe about 4 hours with her. So that was from the intake session and then the follow-ups as well.
Okay. So we help people see the truth, right? Because when you live in the truth, it's really hard to suffer. So let me ask you this. Was that a week ago? Was that 6 months ago? How long ago did you have this talk with her, this session?
So that was a couple of months ago.
Okay. Have you talked with her recently?
Yeah, I actually recently spoke to her, and she just is like a completely different version. She's got so much clarity for her business. She's changed growth and direction in her business. Her husband has started making comments on how much of a different person she is. It's just completely transformed so many areas in her life, like her marriage, her family, her business, her career, finances, everything has completely transformed.
Are we talking about someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s?
50s.
50s. Okay. So this lady comes to you in her 50s. She obviously didn't wake up one day with these issues. These issues have been since childhood, right? So she has struggled her entire life for 50 years. You said she went to therapy. I think you said she did EMDR. She did all these other things. She comes to you. In less than 2 hours, her life has completely changed. That's where it's unbelievable. Like, how can someone listening to this be like, how did you do that? But I see it every single day in my practice, and we see it with Marissa and RTT all the time, right? So you got to tell us, what did you do differently that the therapist over the last 30 years of this lady's life didn't do?
Look, I guess it was not allowing the conscious mind to talk was a really big one. Just really reducing that mental clutter, chatter, and also being able to go straight down into the subconscious. So we had quite a big intake session beforehand. So I got quite a lot of information and had that time where she was able to speak and to like communicate. And then I was like, okay, this is like, now we're not going to be talking with your conscious mind. From this point on, now it's your subconscious mind that's going to be doing the talking. And it was just able to be able to really get into that subconscious, and also really being able to connect the mind and body back together, because there'd been so much trauma in the body. There was such a big disconnect between the mind and the body. So one of the focuses during the treatment was being able to reconnect that mind and body back together, and also doing a releasing technique where we actually released where she'd been storing the trauma in the body. So we did like an actual physical release, like a visualization release for her to remove the trauma from the body. So not only could we identify what the real cause was, why it had happened, how it was showing up in her life today, then we went through and released it, and then we recoded a new set of beliefs for her.
So let's talk to me like I'm a seventh grader, right? You mentioned in the first couple of minutes that the subconscious mind rules the roost. I think those were your words, right? Explain to us, what is the subconscious mind and how does it dominate our behavior?
Yeah, so your subconscious mind is, I guess it's kind of like, it's the quiet mind. You know, I think of your conscious mind as the loud mind, because that's the one that's in constant, you know, you can hear your thoughts and you can hear your communication, whereas your subconscious is the one that basically is commanding everything in your body. So your subconscious mind is the one that makes you take those automatic reactions. And it's kind of like, it's like if you're driving on autopilot. Like, you know, when you drive home from work and you're like, I just forgot that I just drove home. Like, I was not even aware of anything that was happening on the drive home. That's like your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind is the one that's just quietly in the background, just running the show all the time.
Yeah, it's responsible, I believe, for 95% of our behavior.
It is, definitely.
So do you ever ask yourself, like, most of the problems in the world are from people's thoughts, right? Every problem begins with people's thinking, right? Do you ever ask yourself and like scratch your head, like, why? I just found out about this 2 years ago. Like, why isn't this talked about more? Why don't more people know about this?
Look, I think there is becoming like a bit more of an insurgence of people becoming a little bit more aware that they, and there's a lot more kind of out there, and it's like, you control your thoughts, you control your reality, like you create your reality. So I think people are becoming aware of it. But I mean, even for myself, it's like I was aware that my thoughts create my reality. And if I want to live a different life, I need to think different thoughts. But I was like, but how do I think different thoughts? Like I'm so used to thinking the same thoughts all the time. So that was where I was like, okay, I need help to change my thoughts, to think different thoughts, which is where a therapy like this is so great, because it actually goes into your subconscious to recreate those new thoughts. So then your conscious is thinking different thoughts.
Yep. You only heal pain by going to the source, right?
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's physical pain or mental pain, you have to go to the source. So you said something really interesting. You're like, you had awareness. Well, I was the exact opposite, Marissa. 3 years ago, I had the boat, I had the company, I had the cars. My second wife had just left me, but I'm like, it's her problem. It's her fault. There's nothing wrong with me. Everything wasn't perfect. I lost a bunch of money in some silly business dealings. I drank, I smoked weed, but overall, I was like, things are pretty good, right? I went to get my son help for his anxiety, and some lady saw me on a Zoom call I was talking to, and she's like, you have a tic, you blink profusely when you talk about your childhood trauma. So that's how I started the whole process. I had no awareness. Like I thought, life was amazing. So there's, boundless people are listening to this and they're in the same thing. Like, well, I don't have any problems. Like, so what I did is I developed a self-love quiz. So if you want to figure out if you lack self-love, just take the quiz at bradchandler.com/quiz. And you're going to either score extreme self-love. And if you do, I guarantee you your life is like amazing on probably every level, your relationships, your business, your health. But if you score lack of self-love or mild self-love, don't think about that as, oh, woe is me. Just the opposite. Think about your life can change so profoundly, because mine did, and Marissa's clients and her life and it's all changed. So just know that if you're sitting there thinking, is this me? Is this for me? Do I have any issues? All you really have to do is look at your results, right? What do your relationships look like? What does your health look like? Do you drink too much, eat too much, smoke too much? Are you pissed off all the time? Are you anxious all the time? Are you depressed? So I took a different route, but man, I'm so glad for my son and his issues, which I partly created. That started this whole domino effect of where I am today and talking to you. So amazing.
Yeah, it is such a powerful treatment. It's amazing.
How has RTT affected your life?
Gosh, I've had an RTT session for so many different things, for so many different areas as well. I was somebody that was amazing at self-sabotaging, and it was almost like I was like watching a train crash. Like I knew I was doing it, but I couldn't stop doing it. And so I knew that I needed to make changes in my life. And I just was like, I can't do this on my own. I need help. I need someone that can help me. And I'm all about getting results as fast as possible, because I don't want to sit there for hours rehashing the same thing. Like for me, I'm like, it's happened in the past. I don't want to keep reliving it. I just want to fix it and move on. Like life is too short to be stuck dealing with the same thing over and over and over again. So I think for me, some of the biggest takeaways is it's just given me like that sense of like confidence and clarity in the direction that I want in my life. So I discovered this treatment after my father passed actually, and I was very close to him. And I just felt like my whole world imploded. And I just was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I don't want my next 40 years to be the same as my last 40 years. Like, there has to be more to life than this. Like, what impact am I going to leave on the world when I leave? Because, it's like when people are passing and you go through these conversations and you hear people reflect on their life. And I just was like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I want to leave an impact, and I want to leave the world a better place than it was when I was in there, So I was like, okay, what can I do to really drive my passion, I guess, which is like making a positive impact and helping people. And then I discovered RTT, and then I just went down the rabbit hole and have just loved it ever since. And I think also another great thing for me is in relationships as well. In all relationships, like romantic, life relationships, just being able to have like boundaries and standards. Like I quite often would like bend and flex on things, and I just would end up feeling really crappy about it and about situations. So now I feel like I'm, again, more in my power as well myself, clear about the direction for my life, how I want to live my life, and able to more easily move away from situations that don't align and to call in better quality people. Like I have such amazing people in my life now, but it's been that journey, that transformation. It's impacted on so many areas of my life.
Beautiful, beautiful. Is there, so you mentioned setting boundaries and that all of your relationships have gotten better. Is a big part of that now that you feel more confident in yourself, and now that you have the self-love component, you can actually speak your mind and be like, hey, if you say something that offends me or you do something that's wrong, I'm going to speak up and tell you?
Yes, definitely. Because before I just would always feel like, I felt like I kind of had to like fit a box for somebody else. Whereas now I have that acceptance that I create my own box, and, I'm fully in my own comfortableness of who I am as a person. And yeah, it is that self-love factor. And, there are different days where you feel it more than others for sure, but I feel like it's definitely kind of like leveled out at a higher level than what it was for sure.
And how different are your relationships now than compared to before you did the work and found RTT?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like now, from before I started RTT, like the quality of people that I'm calling into my life now are like the level of relationships and connections that I've always craved. Like they're like soul deep connections, which is amazing. And, I went traveling last year and I met so many beautiful people, and it was like that real soul family connection where you just feel like you've known them for a whole lifetime, but you've only just connected now. And there's that just beautiful, like deep love and respect and just a beautiful cherishness of each other. And it's just like a pure enjoyment in a relationship and friendship, which is just such a beautiful way to be living life.
Heck yeah. So I think when you're unwhole and you have these internal issues of self-doubt and lack of self-love, you attract those people in intimate relationships and business partners. And when you make that shift and you do the work, just like you said, you attract these different people in your life. And I've done the same thing. And my relationships, both personally and intimately, have vastly changed. They're just, when you have two people in a relationship fighting for their worth, it's really impossible to have a deeply connected relationship. I say this all the time. Marriages don't fail because of the relationship with the people, with the two parties. Marriages fail because of the relationships each person has with their individual self, how they feel about themselves. So yeah, it's a blessing. Marissa, how do people get in touch with you?
Yes. So you can reach me on my website, which is marissawarren.com, or I'm also on social media as well. So on Instagram, I'm probably more active on Instagram. And yeah, through my website, I've got a contact form, so you can reach me through there.
Okay, great. So I started a private Facebook group called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur and you want to join, just go to bradchandler.com/Facebook. I can't talk, and we'll get you accepted there. So, Marissa, my last question for you is, you must have learned a lot of things in these last couple of years over your major life transformation and working with RTT. I guess two questions. What's the number one thing you learned, and what's the number one thing you want to share? Maybe it's the same thing. What do you want to share with the folks listening today?
I guess the number one thing is that everyone is worthy and deserving of living the life that they want to live, and everyone's definition of success and what brings them enjoyment and happiness is completely unique to them, and they only need to live the life that truly makes them happy.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Marissa. Thank you, everyone. Please, if you like this episode and this podcast, please give me a nice 5-star rating and a review, and share it and like it and subscribe, all the stuff you can do. And that's another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. And remember, love heals all.
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.